Good evening. Welcome to the City of Opa-locka second budget hearing. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Bass,
I'm here.
Commissioner Davis,
Here.
Commissioner Taylor,
Here.
Vice Mayor Williams.
Here.
Mayor Pike.
I'm here. Vice Mayor, would you lead us in invocation?
Sure. Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for this day and the day you've made. Lord, we ask that you continue to keep your hands and blessings on and favor on the great city of Opa-locka, its residents, and its commission. And these things we ask, amen.
Amen.
Pledge of allegiance. All right. Madam Attorney, 5A.
An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, adopting a final millage rate pursuant to Section 200.065 of the Florida statutes for fiscal year 2021 through 2022, commencing October 1, 2021 through September 30th, 2022, setting forth public hearing dates, providing for adoption of representations, providing for repeal of all prior ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. The first reading was held on September 15th, 2021. This is sponsored by the city manager.
All right, this is a public hearing item. Public hearing is open. All right, I do believe we have someone on Zoom. Madam Clerk, could you read the protocols that govern a public hearing? And then we're going to call up Ms. Dottie Johnson.
Good evening. City of Opa-locka public meetings are held in person at Shabandi Village Auditorium, 215 Purvis Avenue, Opa-locka, Florida. Members of the public wishing to address the commission may do so in person or virtually. Those persons wishing to participate virtually should register prior to the scheduled meeting time on the city's website at www.opalockafl.gov. When speaking before the commission, please make sure to give your full name and address for the record. There is a 3-minute time limit for public comments. Please adhere to the decorum policy, which is part of the commission meeting agenda. City commission meetings are aired through live stream at www.youtube.com/users/City of Opa-locka. And we do have several virtual participants. However, they will be speaking on the next agenda item 5B.
All right, thank you. I do see those attendees on Zoom. However, I also see a hand up by Ms. Dottie Johnson to speak on this item. IT, if you can allow Ms. Johnson to speak. Ms. Johnson, you can unmute your mic.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor. I thought I was speaking on the second one, I'm not concerned with the millage. I'm glad it's lower, but I think I was speaking on the second one. Am I correct?
All right, so I will call you up when we get to that item.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, public hearing is closed for 5A. Do I have a motion?
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Taylor,
Second.
second by Commissioner Davis. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll bring up Mr. Anathan to introduce this item.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager, City Attorney. Before I start, very quickly, I am required to make an announcement in accordance with the trim statute. I'll read as follows. The taxing authority is the City of Opa-locka. The tentative millage rate under consider tonight is 9.6500 mils, which is needed to fund the tentative FY22 budget. It is a 4.72% increase greater than the current year rollback rate. The increase in property tax revenue will be used primarily to further enhance public safety and broaden and enhance the services provided by the Parks and Recreation Department. Other than that, we have discussed the 9.65 mils. It does produce $11.2 million revenue. That is deemed to be a appropriate amount to fund what we're recommending in the FY22 budget. I will take any questions anybody may have.
All right, any discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Davis?
thank you. Not really a discussion, but I just wanted to make a statement. This year, we had a 4% increase as it relates to our budget and the trim notice that went out to the public. I just want to acknowledge that the 4% increase, literally allows for us to provide more service to our residents. And just want to state that, with that increase that we are considering, providing more services as we delve through this budget process. So I just wanted to make that statement that we did have an increase and that we are looking to, while lowering the millage rate, increasing our service delivery to our residents. Thank you.
Any other discussion on this item? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Bath,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott,
Yes.
motion passes 5-0.
Madam Attorney, 5B.
An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, approving and adopting the city's general, proprietary, and special funds budget for the fiscal year 2021 through 2022, commencing October 1, 2021 through September 30th, 2022, providing for the expenditure of funds established by the budget, authorizing the city manager to take certain actions, providing for appropriation of all budget expenditures, providing for fees consistent with appropriation and amendment, providing for adoption of representations, providing for conflict and repealer, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. The first reading was on September 15th, 2021, was sponsored by the city manager.
This is a public hearing item. Public hearing is open. I'll call up Ms. Dottie Johnson.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commission, and staff. My name is Dottie Johnson. I reside at 13724 Northwest 22nd Place. Just need some clarification. I noticed that you're going to get some new vehicles. You really need it for the park and recreation, so kudos to that. But I didn't see where the maintenance to wash the cars, and I've seen some of the vehicles. And for the branding that we want to take the city in with beautification and branding, I will strongly suggest, if it's any way possible, to put a dollar amount for vehicles to be washed. That's including the police cars too, because in my opinion, it's needed. Secondly, the seniors program, I see that as a little increase, but I do have an affiliation where I periodically attend some of Hialeah and other neighboring cities. And I see that we are losing a lot of our seniors to other cities' seniors program. And I know we had a shutdown, which some wasn't able to come, but if it's any way possible to look at that, I would greatly like to give that as a consideration. Thirdly, it is my understanding, because I'm bringing this up again, because since 2009, we weren't in a financial ability to provide the employees with pay raise. And if there is an opportunity, if it's already done, well, but if it's not, I think that it is time to look at not the high rank tier, but the ones, the boots on the ground, and look at their salary. I know that you all mentioned before, but I didn't see any legislation. I've been up since 2 o'clock looking at stuff, but I didn't see any legislation for the prisoners coming back to help out with the cleaning. If we're gonna look at beautification, I know it's gonna take more than the manpower we have currently. And if it's any way possible, I know this need to be up by the 30th, probably when you consider for your amendments, please think about those items. And again, thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts. Thank you.
All right, we have next up Reverend Joseph Kelly.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Commission.
Good evening. We can hear you.
Thank you. I want to just not repeat myself, but the things I mentioned the first budget hearing regarding the senior signage on the vehicle, obviously the pay raises and or cost of living adjustment for the employees, and some funding for mental health and homelessness, since we seem to have some funds. I just heard it mentioned the millage rate, although it's going down 4% increase, that we're going to provide more services. So I would hope that that is a part of the new servicing we're going to be doing and or providing. So I wanted to just get a follow-up, and hopefully those things have not been forgotten that I mentioned in the first budget hearing. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
You. All right, Ms. Bacardi Jackson.
Hi, good evening, and thank you so much. I'm Bacardi Jackson with the Southern Poverty Law Center. I'm here to speak with 3 of my colleagues about the proposal to expand the police budget of Opa-locka. And because of this proposal, we believe it is really important to share with you the implications of Section 1 of the recently passed Florida House Bill 1 and our plans to challenge it. We and a growing coalition of cities find HB 1 to be incredibly problematic for municipal home rule, and it presents a challenge for the current proposal. As I mentioned, I am Bacardi Jackson. I'm an interim deputy legal director with Southern Poverty Law Center, and I'm based in our Miami office. And we've assembled a team that is working to represent cities across the state 100% pro bono. And we will be challenging HB 1 because it directly threatens the ability of local governments to structure their budgets that best meet the needs, values, and priorities of their constituents. And here's what it does. HB 1 authorizes certain elected officials to file an appeal with the Florida Administration Commission, which is the governor and his cabinet, if a municipality makes a reduction to the operating budget of its law enforcement agency. And there are a lot of ways that you could end up doing that, including if a municipality fails to maintain any increase in a police budget in following years. That is, if you decide to increase the police budget this year, you may be stuck at that higher spending level in the years to come. So though there are a few elected officials currently who can trigger this review, we understand the governor is also working to expand the number of people who can appeal any budget reduction to include county sheriffs. HB 1 empowers the Administration Commission to amend or modify line by line any item within the operating budget of the municipality's law enforcement agency. HB 1 does not set forth any mechanism for judicial review of the Administration Commission's budget decisions. So once the Administration Commission amends a municipality's budget, that amendment is final. It is unconstitutional for the governor and his cabinet to insert themselves between local government and their constituents. And over the past few weeks, we have been in touch with a lot of elected officials from cities across this state. And these conversations have revealed that not only is HB 1 an assault on the ability of local governments to respond to their constituents, but it carries many unintended consequences like the one I just mentioned. Another example I'd like to flag for this body is the transfer of law enforcement funds. So even if a city maintains programming at similar levels, but moves programs from law enforcement to another agency or from a sheriff's budget to a different public safety agency, that can trigger HB 1. The cities of Gainesville, Miramar, Wilton Manor, and Lake Worth Beach have already passed resolutions authorizing this litigation, and Lauderhill commissioners have reached consensus to do so. And therefore, based on all of the ongoing conversations we're having with local elected officials, we are confident that the growing united coalitions of cities will be able to successfully challenge HB1 and prevent the kind of problem that you are facing today.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. All right. Next, we have Burbeth Foster.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Burbeth Foster, and I'm an attorney with Community Justice Project, and we are located in Miami, Florida. I'll be talking to you this evening about the team that we have built and that we intend to bring this litigation on our coalition's behalf. The Public Rights Project, Community Justice Project, and the Southern Poverty Law Center, along with pro bono counsel Jenner and Block, and a panel of local government law professors are uniquely skilled to bring this case, litigate this case, and win this case. As my colleague, Ms. Jackson, just spoke about, we are a coalition of more than 20 attorneys who have more than 150 years of experience in affirmative litigation. Dozens of those years are experience litigating right here in the state of Florida. The Public Rights Project has worked with 70 local government partners and represented municipal governments from state courts all the way up to the US Supreme Court. My organization, the Community Justice Project, has extensive history bringing impact litigation cases on behalf of various constituents and communities throughout Florida. Most recently, Community Justice Project, along with the Southern Poverty Law Center, we just won a case representing the city of South Miami in its challenge to SB 168, which required local governments to expend maximum local resources to enforce federal immigration law. The federal courts have permanently enjoined that bill from going forward, and we have been able to protect cities from government overreach of the state. Southern Poverty Law Center, as we all know, is a venerable civil rights organization and is well known for its numerous litigation victories, including dozens of landmark cases that have brought systemic reforms throughout the Deep South. For over 50 years, the Southern Poverty Law Center has been a catalyst for racial justice in the South and beyond. Jenner and Block is a leading national firm with extensive litigation prowess. It is also known for its significant commitment to pro bono work, having been ranked #1 for pro bono commitment by American Lawyer 11 times. And lastly, the Local Solution Support Center and their panel of local government professors have led the charge on combating abuses of state preemption through national amicus efforts to defend local democracy, including supporting Atlanta and Austin in their successful challenges against the orders of governors over masking. These professors are experts in home rule and state constitutional protections. As you can see, we have assembled a team that is prepared to bring this litigation on behalf of the many cities that Ms. Jackson has just spoke of. We're hopeful that Opa-locka will join us in this fight.
All right, I see we have two more on the call. I do want to make sure we note that this is a public hearing item for our budget. So if there's more conversation about the signing on to litigation, that has to be relegated to our public comment section of our record commission meeting that starts at 7 o'clock. So just keep that in mind. If there's more comments, it has to be focused on our budget. So Ms. Jackson did so in terms of focusing on the police budget. So with that, I would like to call up the next speaker, Mr. Jonathan Miller.
Good evening, and thank you so much for recognizing us to provide comments this evening. I'm Jonathan Miller. I'm the legal director at the Public Rights Project. And this proposed litigation goes to the heart of budgetary decision-making by the city of Opa-locka and other cities in Florida, because the principle that the Florida Constitution protects local budgetary authority from state overreach. This case and this complaint is about combating tools that are being used for the state to overreach and infringe on home rule, and this commission's authority to express policy preferences, express the will of the people in the community, to express your view of the right balance among competing considerations through the budget. The Florida Constitution protects home rule and says municipalities shall have governmental, corporate, and proprietary powers to enable them to conduct municipal government, perform municipal functions, and render municipal services, and may exercise power for municipal purposes except as otherwise provided by law. Local budgeting is one of the most core municipal functions and is necessary for facilitating municipal services. Local governments, like yours, have limited resources to cover a variety of programs, and you have to allocate those resources to best meet the needs of the city and your community. The Florida Constitution protects that local budgeting authority through home rule, through separation of powers, and the prohibition against unfunded mandates. HB 1 usurps that local budgeting process and allows the governor and his cabinet to dictate purely local decisions. The state executive branch has no place in making local budgetary decisions and overriding the will of the community. HB 1's budget review process is intrusive because there's no limit on the types of reductions the governor and his cabinet can review. Simple reallocation of resources, decisions to move one department into another department, to have an expenditure one year and not the next, is subject to review, rejection, and a veto by the governor and the administration commission. That's unlawful, it's unconstitutional, and it should be challenged in court. Thank you.
Paul Chavez.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Paul Chavez. I am a senior supervising attorney at the Southern Poverty Law Center. I work with Bacardi Jackson, who spoke earlier out of our Miami office, and I'm calling in from my home here in Miami Shores. So the team is recommending an affirmative litigation strategy brought on behalf of a coalition of cities. And we are doing so for a number of reasons. First, affirmative litigation can invalidate HB 1 Section 1 as a whole. Waiting to challenge an individual decision by the administration commission would not be as impactful and would, of course, require several other intervening steps. The value of an affirmative case is that can be filed now. Secondly, an affirmative case provides the opportunity to challenge the law as part of a movement. And this includes as part of a coalition of cities. So HB 1 has a universal deterrent effect on budgeting, but each city's unique economic circumstances trigger HB 1 differently. That is, every city has a unique story to tell about HB 1's impact on their budget and their budgeting decisions. So it's important not just to have the strength in numbers, but to the strength of these claims to file them all together as a coalition of cities. Third, filing a case now means standing up against the impact that HB 1 is having here and elsewhere right now. Every city's budgeting process is affected by HB 1 because there is now a mechanism to override decisions that your city will make. This is a power that should not be taken from cities. Your community is harmed by HB 1, and each city's power is being curtailed. HB 1 is currently causing budget uncertainty in cities across the state. There's no definition of what qualifies as a funding reduction in the law, and thus no real notice as to what might trigger HB 1's review process. So now is the time to challenge HB 1, and we urge Opa-locka to join this growing coalition. Thank you so much for your time, Commissioners.
Public hearing is open.
Good evening, Mayor, Commission. Janie Russell, 1210 Perry Street, Opa-locka, also the Executive Director of Teen Upward Bound. And I'm here this afternoon to speak. I see that there is going to be an increase in it looks like an increase in the police budget. And I'm here to talk about community policing. And when I speak of community policing, I am talking from the mindset of a mother or grandmother and someone that services children and their families in our community. And we're not talking about community policing in the area of more arrests being made to people. We need resources. As you all know that I'm over in the Magnolia North, what used to be the SET building. And weekly I get people that come there and knock on the door concerning resources that are needed over in that area. And that's not the only area, that's just one. But I see it more on a daily basis because I'm there. But we need, when I talk about community policing, we need our police, our community, we need families, we need churches, we need everybody to come together to make this happen. It just can't be the police department. And in speaking with the chief, I spoke to him intensively and let him know that I'm not in favor of police that harass people and think it's just necessary to take everybody to jail. I'm talking about community policing where you have real input from your community and you are servicing those people in a humane way, not an inhumane way. So I do support, after hearing what I just heard, I don't know whether I want to support increase, but whatever you're doing in the police department, please let it include real community policing and let it involve the citizens of the community because they're the ones that are impacted daily about what goes on in the city. Thank you.
Public hearing is open. Public hearing is closed. We have a motion.
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Davis. Second by Commissioner Taylor. And before we have manager introduce this, I do want to thank all those that come to our budget hearing to speak and share information and also thoughts and ideas to make us make better decisions as a commission. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us this evening and continue to do so. All right, Mr. Manager, could you introduce this budget?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I bring up Mr. Anthony, I want to make a couple of notes in regards to this version of the annual proposed budget. Due to the actions of the CRA last night, we had to scramble this morning and contact the state of Florida to figure out solutions in order to ensure that the city's budget passed tonight, if that is the case. And so it was agreed upon to remove the CRA from the city's budget and treat the CRA as a separate entity. And based on that, this is why you have an updated document up here today. I do have to say, after doing research, my staff has came back to me in regards to the CRA situation. And a 15-day extension only can be granted if there's additional funds left in the budget to move into the next budget year. That doesn't work with salaries and some other items such as fringe benefits. So unless the CRA passes a budget by September 30th, essentially staffing and things that require operation or subsidies regarding the CRA would not be able to be approved nor move forward unless there's an approved budget from the CRA. In saying that, as the manager of the city, working closely with the CRA through its interim manager, I look forward to working together to come to a conclusion to assist the CRA in moving this budget forward prior to September 30th. So both budgets can be favorably looked at. I will say, based on talking to staff, we will attempt, once the CRA passes their budget, we will attempt to ask the state for expedited status to review the budget for approval. And hopefully and realistically, that approval will come before September 30th and everything will be great and grand. I will say this: accountability starts with everybody. And I do, after listening to the CRA meeting last night, understand the concerns of the board members of the CRA in that they got this budget at the last minute. As everybody knows, the CRA has been through a lot of transition over the last 3 or 4 months. And based on that transition, the ball was dropped somewhere in that the budget was never introduced to the CRA in a workshop format, and they were just received a document at the last minute to approve. And I do agree with the chairwoman, Janie Russell, in that the entity should not just get a document and be forced to vote on it in one night with short notice, and especially not within a 5 or 8 day period. It's important that CRA board members have the opportunity to review the budget, make changes to the budget, and ensure that their vision is moving
Mr.
forward.
Manager, your sound, we can barely hear you.
I'm sorry,
Speaking to the mic.
It's mask. So in saying all that, I think we have a way forward. I have spoken to the CRA interim manager today. We do have a path forward, and we will move towards that path forward to ensure the CRA is placed in a successful fiscal and fiduciary position by September 30th, by having a workshop next week. And after the workshop, make whatever changes through motion during a meeting that is directly after the workshop, and hopefully transmit the budget up to the state. The CRA interim manager is currently working on narratives. He is also working on scheduling individual meetings between today and Monday with each CRA member to go over those narratives, make additional alterations before the workshop and meeting. So this will mean there is at least 2 to 3 bites at the apple, in that each CRA member will meet with the interim CRA manager to go over the budget and narratives. You will have a workshop where you will additionally go over that information a second time. And then you will have a meeting where you can make changes or alterations to the budget and hopefully approve it for transmission. So I think that is the efficient path forward. I think moving forward, and I've always said this, the CRA should be treated as a separate entity separate from the city of Opa-locka. And saying that is going to take a lot of learning because we're not used to doing that. But we are moving towards that path. And I think this is the first step in doing that. So I thank you all. I appreciate the CRA board, its members, its thoughtful conversation last night, sharing their concerns and how they feel. Because I believe as a board that represents the community and is for the community and it lives in the community, I think it's essential that you all move based on the community's will and desires. And the CRA is booming at this point. It's at a place that has not been ever. And I think in order to move it in a place that needs to be, we need to stop just approving cookie cutter budgets every year, not meeting budgetary goals, and ensure that we have targeted achievements based on everybody's vision. So thank you for that. I ask Mr. Anthony to come up at this time.
Commissioner Taylor.
Mr. Manager, I wasn't at the CRA meeting yesterday, so I don't really know what went on. But if we do, you said the CRA has until September 30th to submit the budget. And I know this is not a CRA meeting, but I'm asking it anyway. So if the CRA does not submit that budget, the CRA cannot operate. Is that what you're saying?
It would not have an operating budget, and it's not eligible for a 15-day extension. In order to be eligible for a 15-day extension, certain line items may be eligible extension, but not all. Like, for example, salaries, that's a set number.
So that's why it was removed from the city's budget.
Correct.
To go as its own entity.
Correct. So the city's budget can be passed.
Okay,
hopefully tonight. Because if the CRA budget was to remain in the city's budget tonight, and the CRA did not approve the budget yesterday, this would not be an approved document. Just say you approve this in second reading tonight, this document with the CRA budget included would not be an approved document. So it actually would have hindered the city's budget. If the commission does so choose to approve it tonight, it would have hindered the budget to go up to the state for full approval.
thank you. I just want to understand that.
All right. Yeah, I'm a little confused about that. And looking at section 4-5, our annual budget adoption, section B, it states that if the city fails to adopt the annual budget by September 30th, the commission may by resolution direct that amounts appropriated for current operations for the current fiscal year shall be deemed adopted for the ensuing fiscal year. So there is an ability, because we've done this in the past, to continue to move the budget forward using the current budget of the CRA or of the city. How does this differ from what you're saying, and where's that information at?
So, Mr. Mayor, if I remind everybody, we're under financial emergency, and we do have an agreement with the governor of the state of Florida to ensure that budgets are submitted in a timely manner. Any action of the commission related to the budget will have to go to the state for approval. So even if you guys would today just say next week pass this resolution, it still have to go to the state, and it'll still be under a 20-day review process. So it would not essentially be passed until the state approves it. So it still will be a delay. And if you would like to get some clarification, I can ensure that Mr. Anthony reaches out to the state and gets something in writing in order to clarify that. But we are in financial emergency. We do have a agreement of cooperation with the state of Florida. They do have fiduciary responsibility to monitor and approve our budget. Even if the commission was to pass a resolution now to extend the budget, that is still subject to state of Florida approval. So in this essence, if we were not in financial emergency, that may be true. But since we're in financial emergency, there's still a review process. The state of Florida still has to approve the budget. They still have 20 days. So for example, if it's passed today, it's not active today. It would be active upon getting a letter and memorandum back and of approval from the state of Florida saying they approved the budget to be enacted. So because we're in financial emergency, there are complications tied to this. And there are a lot of quandaries to it as well. And I'm just being very realistic. If Mr. Anthony wants to come up and speak on it further, or you want to we get something in writing so you guys can have it, I'm fine with that as well. We've been doing research all day on this matter because we do want to know we do want to know what the implications are based on the actions of the CRA last night. And so I was briefed today briefly on those things. No meetings were had, and it was agreed to remove the CRA budget from the city's budget. In that, if you pass the budget tonight, it might hinder the city's operations moving forward. And the state of Florida by the way, has not guaranteed an expedited review. They say they would consider an expedited review of any budget changes that go up. So anytime a budget change goes up, it's a mandatory 20-day period. They can reduce that period by choice if they review it sooner. But anything that goes up budgetarily is 20-day waiting period. And that would go into October, which is beyond the start of our new budget. Mr. Anthony, if you want to come up.
Yes, and please clearly, because you mentioned that because specific line items can't be moved, like those things is where I'm confused about. So we can get some more clarity on that particular policy and where is that located? Because we've done this before, like over the course of this financial emergency. So that's why I'm trying to get a little, I'm confused about this new policy. I haven't heard of that. So if you can just help me understand that a little more. Could you direct me to where that is? Because that makes a very that's a decisive decision that we have to do as a commission. So basically saying that we have to pass this tonight. And also we have to have a meeting to pass the CRA budget within the week. And our laws give us the ability, if a budget is not passed on or before the 30th, to extend it every 15 days, which is something we've done. So could you clarify that particular point, just so that we know how we can move as a commission?
Good evening again, Bob Annethan, Budget Administrator. I cannot comment on that. I was not involved in that research. I was too busy changing the budget all day, so I'm not going to be able to answer that. The one thing that did catch my attention just listening to the conversation this evening is that the various sections that you refer to may possibly refer to the city, but it's not clearly refer to the CRA. So I'll just throw that out. I don't have an answer, and I don't mean to offer that as a statement that it does not apply to the CRA. But there's great confusion in terms of how the CRA operates versus the city.
Okay, then, because this is the first time we'll be removing the CRA budget from the city budget, which I don't know if we can do that. With this, I'm very confused about this item, and we need to be very clear about how to move in this regard. Because if we're saying that if we pass this budget tonight and the CRA budget is not within, what are the rules and regulations that govern passing the CRA budget without it being tied to the city? And if these laws that is laid out in our codes does not apply to the CRA, what are those laws that apply to the CRA? Because maybe we need to pull up, if someone can bring the bylaws of the CRA that focus on the budget, that would be helpful. But if we're going to adopt a budget that doesn't have the CRA now, we need to be very clear what that means. And right now, me personally, I'm still confused because I read this, it says one thing, I'm hearing another thing, you saying you're not a part, so I'm hearing it from, I just need clarity on that. So
Mr. Anthony.
if someone can bring up those CRA bylaws, that would be very helpful. One thing. So Commissioner Davis, and then I'll go back to you, Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I have the CRA bylaws pulled up on my phone. Looking at section 5.1, where it says the fiscal year, which is concurrent with the cities, beginning in October 1 and ending on September 30th. As far as the budget, it states that the CRA budget for the agency and redevelopment area shall be approved after a publicly noticed workshop and budget hearing for citizen participation. I know that the workshop was mentioned at the CRA meeting that did not occur. So that's partly where the problem lies, that we didn't have an opportunity to provide feedback to the manager and the director. It also goes on to state that the CRA shall not expend any funds other than those in the budget or otherwise authorized by the board, provided that the commission should have the power to amend its budget as it may from time to time to be necessary. It says the annual budget of the CRA should be submitted to the Miami-Dade County Board of Commissioners for review by no later than October 30th of each fiscal year. And I'm assuming that the manager, the process that he's speaking on is the second layer, being that we're in receivership and our budget subsequently having to also be approved by the state. So I don't know if that clear up any confusion, but that's word for word from our bylaws, section 5.2.
Okay. All right, so. All right, so with this, that means that as a CRA, based upon what you just said, the CRA has until October 30th to submit it. So it's not September 30th. That's correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So there is time. So the budget doesn't have to necessarily be tied to our city budget, as management is proposing. And if we do a public workshop, we have until October 30th to pass that. October 30th.
Yeah, but I think what the manager was alluding to with the September 30th deadline was with the state of Florida. Am I correct?
Yeah, so in our agreement with the state of Florida, all budget deadlines are September 30th, including the CRA, which is contrary to your bylaws. And secondly, if we were not to take into account the agreement with the state and just say we went off the CRA's bylaws, the state still has to review it and it's still a 20-day period. So that would mean you would want to pass the CRA budget within the next 2 weeks in order to get into that 20-day timeline so it can be finalized and approved by October 30th. So, I just want everybody to understand we have these dates, but you got to understand you got that 20-day layer that's there. So unfortunately, until we're out of financial emergency, when we pass budgets, they're not approved until we get a document back after review from the state of Florida saying this budget is approved and can be adopted, or we get the letter that you guys get monthly of all the legislation that's approved. We cannot enact legislation until the approvals come. So I'm just speaking on an extra layer. And also I'm speaking on efficiency purposes. There's a lot of complications with the CRA's budget being intertwined with the city's budget, just as Commissioner Davis stated. Your CRA bylaws say one thing, our ordinance says another about the city budget, but you got both these budgets in the same document. So when we did an inquiry today in regards to it, it was agreed to separate the city's budget and the CRA's budget. If the will, I have to prepare for approval tonight. You guys may not approve this, but I have to prepare for approval. So if it's the will of the commission to approve this tonight, I have to set it up so it can be approved, transmitted, and submitted so the city can operate after October 1st in an efficient and effective manner. We're in financial emergency. Even be late with our budget is an issue. And that may have happened in the past, but we've had great track record over the last 2 years, if not a little bit more, of submitting our budgets in a timely manner, having them approved. So to go backwards and now start submitting untimely budgets for reasons that, becomes an issue. So we need to figure out the issue in regards to that. Which is why we just went through this huge budget process. It's like you said, hey, we had workshops in August. We had a first budget hearing. We're having a second budget hearing. My hopes would be if there are any significant changes the commission would do made to the budget, that would be transmitted to us during the first budget hearing. So we can make those changes, shoot it up to the state of Florida, have them give us an approval and either get it back by today's date or delay this budget hearing until a date suitable before September 30th. All I'm saying is, I think it's important and essential because we all have a fiduciary responsibility up here for the city's finances. I think it's important that we know what the implications of the decisions we make. And I understand the thought process. As a manager, I understand the thought process of the CRA board last night. But what I want to do is help the interim CRA manager develop a plan where he can get an approved budget in a timely manner. And I feel, based on the comments I heard last night and talking to Corian today, I think between now and next week, you all should be able to get together, get the narratives done, do the money movement that needs to be done, get a workshop, and do the public hearing on the same day. It's already in the process of being advertised. and get it approved. And what I'm obligating myself to do is make me and Mr. Anthony make contact to the state and ask them for expedited approval, since the CRE's budget is not that large. And hopefully let's get a letter saying it's done and ratified and approved by September 30th, so we can stay in this track. You know, we don't want to go backwards. We want to move forward. So I'm off my soapbox. Thank you guys for allowing me to give you my time today.
Mr. Mayor, just real quickly,
Commissioner Davis.
I just want to just state my opinion as far as the budget is concerned. I know that, I think I heard you had some concerns with the budget being isolated, referring to the CRA budget from the cities. I mean, basically the will of the board last night at the meeting was for, as the manager alluded to, was for the board to operate independently as its own entity. I know historically speaking, we've always approved the city's budget with the CRA budget, but it's usually brought in on the second reading, which was why, you know, our first time seeing it was last night. Based on the bylaws, workshop should have occurred. However, it didn't. So, you know, here we are with an unapproved CRA budget. And, you know, what's on the table tonight is the city's budget. I think they should be two separate conversations. You know, just because the governing document, so the CRA, as far as approval and regulations, rely on its bylaws for guidance, while our city's budget is subject to our charter and what our charter states. Yeah, so I mean, in my opinion, I would like to see the processes separate. Obviously, not to talk too much about the CRA, but obviously, staff has reached out on, you know, any amendments to the bylaws. So, you know, we'd rather have two readings, you know, and do it by ordinance. That's an option that we as board members and as well as the other board members, we have that option to make that decision. So I just wanted to state those things. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, want to continue?
Sorry. If just to the price of belaboring the obvious, there is the board, the CRA board does approve the budget. We've talked to the county, the department over there that oversees the CRAs. They have said that there is no need that the city commission approve it. And consequently, I think going forward, they really do need to be separate, separate documents, separate approval. Well, they are separate approval processes. So, I mean, it's within the structure, and I think I had mentioned at prior time, going forward in future years, the intention was to break it out. And what's occurred in the last 24 hours has just made that occur just a little bit earlier. The state has no problem with the budget going forward without the CRA in it. So that, I mean, that's not going to be an issue tonight. Nelson, please. Okay, next one, please. A very brief agenda, and then it's wherever you all want to go after I've covered a couple points that I think needs to be addressed tonight. We've done the millage rate adoption, so we don't have to talk about that any further. One of the things that was requested from the last commission hearing, I'm sorry, the last budget hearing, was how does the FY22 budget stack up against what we had in the 5-year? No, I'm sorry, I've got a whole sequence, not paying attention. Address very quickly the impact of having taken the CRA out. That'll be one slide. And then the next point will be discussing how does the FY22 budget compare to the FY22 year in the 5-year plan. And after that, it's commission discussion. We have no prearranged presentations. All the presentations that were prepared before, some of which you saw, some of which you didn't see, are available if you want to get involved in those this evening. So next slide, please. CRA removal. Again, just a single slide on it. The logic on it was that it is separate, as I mentioned a moment ago, and the budget is not finalized. This, we're trying to move forward with the city budget tonight in terms of getting approval. It was not feasible to leave the CRA in there. Consequently, I spent some number of hours today taking out. Impact is not very hard to understand. We took out of the CRA the various staff participation times that were charged to the CRA, brought them back into community development. You can see that's $106,000. CRA also was going to fund two projects, one of which was going to be funding either some portion of the historic city hall or the historic fire station for $250,000. And then the second thing that was in there that they were, CRA had indicated on a preliminary basis an interest to provide $60,000 towards the $100,000 match that the city has to provide in support of the state fencing grant, $200,000 project. So that was brought back across to cover the operating expense, i.e. the compensation. And then also, I should point out, it's a small thing, but the CRA was paying various G&A charges for administrative services, insurance, and so forth. With the CRA out of the budget, that has to be picked up by other funds, primarily the general fund. So the combination of the $106,000 that the compensation was brought back in, plus the additional allocations being charged back to the various other funds, and primarily the general fund, used $125,000 of general fund contingency. The budget did start out at $1.5 million with the $125,000 taken out. It's now $1,375,000. The other thing, because this is a one-time transaction, can use fund balance, and we'll discuss that further. We use $310,000 of fund balance, so that whereas the fund balance use in the general fund up to yesterday was around 2.2 million, for the moment it's 2.5. And again, as the CRA budget sorts out, some or all this expense could well go back into the CRA budget. So for the moment, it's a holding place until that's firmed up within the CRA. So that basically is the impact of taking the CRA out of the combined budget at this point. Any questions on that? Okay. Nelson, Nick, I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor.
Please.
No, thank you. No question, but I would like this document in writing, provided that we don't have it in front of us.
You have, I apologize, I left about 20 pages of changes on each of your desks just so you could insert in your budget book. It's not summarized in that way. It's certain the details are there, but certainly this presentation certainly can be made available to everybody.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Thank you, Mr.
All
Allen.
right. And just FYI, I know we just received a few documents in front of us. And I know at least two of them are a direct result. I personally wanted the last two budget documents because just wanted the hard copies. They provided it to also the rest of the commission. And I think this one for September 22nd, this is for today, the one we have in front of us. It just doesn't have that slide. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, sir. I was asked to provide them up through the hearing on the 15th. I certainly could have done this as well.
Okay. All right. All right, y'all, everybody clear about what we got in front of us? Okay, all right, go ahead.
Next slide, please. In fact, next two slide after that, please. Ouch, that's going to be tough to read. I apologize for that. It was much larger on my screen. What I'm attempting to do here, perfect, thank you. I wanted to summarize all of the key metrics in terms of how the FY22 within the 5-year plan compared to what we're proposing tonight. And I'll just start at the top and then I'll come down the lower left-hand corner in a moment. But we've already talked about the increase in the property tax base. You can see that overall, compared to what was in the FY22, let me just say within the 5-year plan, by definition, FY22, The tax base is $77 million greater than what we started with in the 5-year plan for this year. The CRA did get a portion of that. It did leave an increase of $57 million. That is roughly translated within the general fund. That's at least $500,000 right there. The other thing that's different from the 5-year plan, the millage rate is 1/10 of a mil less. That did take a little over $100,000 out of the revenue for FY22 in the budget, but that's fine. The increased headcount, you can see full-time 11.4, part-time 17.0. I will tell you that 11.4 as of yesterday was 10.2 because we had 1.2 that was actually assigned to the CRA with pulling it out. You now see it there, and I'll talk about the implications of that in a moment. So the implication that the overall funding is up by 1.3 million, expenditures 4.142 million, and I'll explain the rationale for that in a moment. If I can take your attention to the lower left corner, you can see the opening fund balance for FY22 in the 5-year plan was deemed to be just slightly less than a negative $700,000. The 5-year plan was designed to bring up the fund balance over the 5-year period up to actually about $4.1 million. Again, a reminder that the requirement is within our cost structure. We should have a fund balance of at least $3.2, $3.3 million. So the point I'm getting to on the first column is, given that we were trying to build up the fund balance, the expenditures in the second year of the 5-year plan were very, very lean to allow us to actually start to build up fund balance. I'll now ask you to move across one column, and you can see instead of going into FY22 with a negative $696,000 balance, every indication is we're certainly going to be north of $6 million. So consequently, what was done in the 5-year plan, which was to try to be very, very lean, just to start building up fund balance. Now that we have a surplus of fund balance, and I'll use that term gingerly, but again, with a threshold of 3.3, at least mathematically, we're looking at a surplus of $3 million going into this year. The recommended budget said, now that we do have available fund balance, and understanding that fund balance in terms of its use is intended under normal circumstances for one-time expenditures, never use it for funding ongoing operations, but for one-time purposes, you can use it. And we feel that that's in fact what we've done in this budget. So this is kind of the overview of all the major metrics that have changed since the development of the 5-year plan. I'll now go ahead and break it into the various segments for a little further discussion. Next slide, please. There we go. Again, this is just a reminder. You've seen this before. It's now updated by another $310,000 for taking those 2 projects out of the CRA. But you can see that under the new, like I say new, updated from what was yesterday, yesterday we were looking at a fund balance of just about 2.2. Today we're looking at 2.5 greater expenditure than the funding coming in this year. And again, as I've explained to you before, we can identify at least that much in terms of one-time expenditures. So we're meeting the requirement for use of fund balance. Doesn't mean we have to use it, but that's our recommendation, to try and build the service level of the city back up to where we think the citizens are expecting it. So that's just a reminder. Next page, please. Okay. This gets a little busy. The things that I've highlighted here is what I've done is shown you shown you the comparison of the key funding issues, the 5-year plan versus the budget, and also the expenditures. In the funding side, we have talked about it before. I've highlighted permits. I just going to go to the next page. I'm going to address that a little bit further. And the reason I mention it at the moment is in terms of when the budget was put together, particularly when the 5-year plan was put together, it was very conservative. And even when the FY22 budget was put together, I was very conservative. And I'm going to show you something in regards to permits, which suggests that there's probably upside even in the FY22 budgets by the time the year progresses. In terms of the expenditures, you can see $1.179 million greater than what was in the budget. I will tell you yesterday that was slightly over $1 million, but we did throw in $106,000 in CRA expenditures, so that number did grow today. And the other issue is we have a contingency that is somewhat larger that's in the 5-year plan. And again, yesterday that was it was greater by another 120. It was greater by 4,000 rather than 275. Had to use it to bring the CRA back in. Next page, please, because I'm going to go through these.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes, sir.
could you go back? This is actually still on this item here. This is where my biggest concern is
Yes, sir.
this. That first line shows that our property taxes based upon a 5-year plan and the budget has grown by 476,000.
Yes, sir.
However, our compensation, which will stay steady for unless we cut staff, has grown by 1.1 million. How do we sustain such a high level of staffing and compensation when our total funding isn't growing to meet that compensation?
Yes, sir. I think you may have answered your own question on that one, because we did have a discussion on the 15th about the property tax base. And it, again, to go back to my analogy, it's a compressed spring ready to grow up. So if you were to put an FY23 column next to it, you would see the property tax revenue. Again, you have the bill, depending what you want to do with the millage rate and so forth. But based on what we talked about before, you would expect to see it go up certainly another $500,000 or $600,000. So that would be in this my imaginary column to the right. Compensation, there's some things going on there. First off, I don't see any significant increase in compensation beyond what's built in there. So when you looked at this imaginary column to the right, you would not see a $600,000 increase in compensation. So I believe that the structure is there to make it sustaining, because I think the compensation has gone up and will be plateauing from here on out. I mean, I'll take you through what's in the compensation and give you some idea of maybe where some of the relief is. But again, does that make sense? Property tax will go up, compensation will go up a couple percent maybe, but certainly not the way the property tax will go up. And I'm also going to point out a couple other things where I think you're going to see some further increase, again, back in my permits line. So what you're doing is you're now talking about, okay, how do we do this in FY23? And then you have to start with, what do you think your compensation is going to go up? And I will argue for the moment, I don't think you're going to see an increase of, let's say, well, total compensation, 2-3%, maybe it'll go up a couple $100,000, maybe.
Okay, so you're saying because we expect our property taxes to go up $500,000 or $600,000 next year, that will balance out the steady increase in compensation that we have now. And because you don't see a significant increase in compensation next year, then it would balance out. That's what you're
Yes,
saying?
sir. In fact, we'd override it because I think the revenue is going to be greater than compensation, which says you now have additional dollars to use for other purposes as well. I agree it's a big number, but again, my belief is up and then it plateaus with a very marginal increase after that. And it may be overstated in a couple of reasons, which we will try and cover in a moment. Okay.
It's our issue, but you can
I
continue
mean, if
on.
you're not comfortable with that.
Yeah,
I'll be glad-
I'm personally not, but we can continue on. It's okay. Continue on.
Next chart, please. This is the only point I want to make before I said I was highlighting permits. As you can see in budget for next year, permits is just shy of $1 million. just thought I'd show you what year-to-date this year looks like, and it's about $1.9 million. I mean, there's a lot of people who are really spending a lot of money to be here. Just to put that permit number in perspective, over 2 years, you're talking about $3 million a permit. So it says there's an awful lot of property being developed out there that's going to contribute to the city's revenue going forward. So it's just an observation. It just says even the budget may be understated for next year in terms of what the expectations might be. Next chart, please. This is where the growth in headcount is by department, and we'll look at it in a little more detail. Again, if prices stay like a stuck record under community development, yesterday instead of no growth, it was negative 1.2, given the assignments that were into the CRA. So again, these are the numbers. You saw the summary numbers before. You can see where the increase is in the city managers. It's been the discussion of bringing the legislative experience into that department as opposed to clerk. Also, one of the two part-time is for purchasing. The part-time person, guidance from the the September 15th meeting was that part-time person should be a full-time. That'll be addressed in budget amendment in October. Within HR, they've gone from a staff of 2 to a staff of 3, and that they really had a workload that I don't think there's an argument as to whether they needed that or not. Building and licensing, you can see 3 people there. Problems certainly have been recognized within that department, doubling the permit clerks 2, and also bringing in on a full-time basis a minimum housing inspector, which is certainly a justifiable need in the city. Within Parks and Rec, we've talked about the 15 part-timers. I mean, that is standard for most Parks and Recreation departments. The people they work with are not here 40 hours a week. So it gives a lot of flexibility in making available the city resources to when there are needs for it. Within the police department, the 5-year plan called for 48 sworn. We're one above that at this point. Within the non-sworn, you can see 3, that's 2 PSA and also a outreach specialist, which goes along the line of the discussion earlier this evening about community policing. Code enforcement, they are swamped with what they have to process, and that the one person there is an additional administrative assistant. And the admin, the purpose there is, again, Public Works, the Public Works Director controls 1/3 of the city's budget and 1/3 of the staff. Desperately needs somebody to take care of a lot of the administrative stuff, not in terms of filling out forms, but being proactive in grants, various projects and so forth. So the recommendation is 1 person there. And then the last one has to do with illegal dumping. And that's just doubling the resource over what was in this year's budget. So that's where your growth is. In each and every case, we feel it better serves the community. And I'm going to take you through a couple pages very quickly, just to the dollar impact of that. Next slide, please. I didn't get a chance to clean this one up. You can see I've got some area in there for community development. Again, same story. There were some savings in there that dissipated today. Within the city managers area, you can see the salary impacts of the 3 people. And again, these are not just salary, these are fully burdened compensation amounts. So this is what's in the city manager's budget, which contributes to that 1.1 million we're looking at. Coming down to the building licensing department, 2 clerks and a minimum housing inspector, another 161,000. Next slide, please. And this is just the second half of it. Parks and Rec did take out a Parks and Rec recreational leader supervisor. Have the savings there. And again, we've talked about the 15 part-time people. So you can see the net impact there is 156,000. Police, we did talk about the 1 officer and the 3 non-sworn, and you can see what the impact is there. Code enforcement, 1 administrative system, fully burdened 42,000. And the PW operations manager, for reasons just discussed, another 82,000. And the illegal dumping going from 1 full-time equivalent to 2 full-time equivalent adds another $47,000. So the sum of all that is 927,000. It leaves 251,000 to get to the number we looked at 2 or 3 pages ago, 1,179,000. Within the 251, for example, the police have very dramatically increased overtime over what was in the budget. I'm sorry, in the 5-year plan, by about $70,000 before you burden it. So a little over 100,000 of that is additional police overtime. That's a number every year has got to be understood. That may be a necessary number, that may be an overstated number. So it's not part of the total ongoing cost structure. Another thing is that we have in there $25,000 associated with unemployment compensation. That popped up for the first time ever. We don't know if that's one-off that had to do with the pandemic and everybody being laid off. It's in there now. It may not be part of an ongoing part of the ongoing cost structure. Another one was my error, as much as I hate to admit it. When I put the 5-year budget together, I was not aware of part of the police compensation being holiday pay. And that by the time it's you take it across, everybody's eligible for it. It's another $100,000. So that is part of it. That is part of the cost structure. It will go forward. And there are a couple wage salary increases. I have provided the history that was requested. I think everybody has the time. So there's a little bit of that in the 251,000. So that is the makeup of the additional 1.179 million that you see vis-a-vis the 5-year plan. And again, it's my belief that it is ascended to a level to meet the community needs, and it is certainly not going to continue on that growth line. Next slide, please. This basically is just kind of wraps up what I've been talking about the last 5-10 minutes. Revenue, compensation this year for FY22 certainly was covered within the $1.3 million of revenue growth we had. The FY23 revenue, we've now talked several times about it, appears to be very strong and don't see any reason why it won't happen and won't necessarily continue to happen. And as I said before, I believe that we've reached a level of staffing that allows the city to really provide the level of service that residents are expecting. So this completes the part that I felt that I had to respond to in terms of issues that had come up since the last hearing. At this point, we're wide open to any discussion you'd like to have, either from me or any of the other attendant department heads.
All right, floor is open for discussion.
Mr. Manager.
Commissioner,
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Taylor.
In regards to illegal dumping and code enforcement, does code enforcement have a night shift and weekend shift to police that?
Currently, they're not on rotating shifts. We're looking at placing them on rotating shifts to address that. We also have expended the funds recently in regards to the program as far as advertising it citywide and other outreach through media outlets. But we are looking at creating additional shifts within code enforcement in the future. Again, we had access issues with Cairo Lane. So that was one of our biggest concerns. We are going to put portable cameras up, and the chief of police, I'm sure, is going to monitor that and then move his resources appropriately. And also use his law enforcement officers out on the street patrolling to supplement that effort as well.
So as of now, there is no, you said rotating shifts for code enforcement?
No, so at this time, code works during the day. And then you have the police department, the officers have the authority to issue code enforcement violations. So if there's anything illegal dumping at night, any crime related to illegal dumping, the police department can take action as well.
Going forward, you're proposing that
we will look at rotating shifts. We look at productivity during the day because every code enforcement officer is assigned a sector, and we'll look at having those people rotate to different shifts. Yes, we've done it before during significant issues, so we don't have a problem looking at doing it again.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor?
I'm not sure if the commission received the salary history. Have you all been able to take a look at it?
Well, I received it
Okay.
via email a
Okay.
couple weeks back.
Oh, I just wanted to make sure.
Everyone else received it? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know about you, but my life has been hectic this week, so. I am speechless. And I'm glad I received this document because I've been asking about it for a while. If we're being told that salary increases were an offset of the pandemic, I'm sorry, not the pandemic, the financial crisis. I am looking at a salary increase of $17,200. This is the stuff that our residents don't see. This is the stuff that our residents don't see. And when we talk about, because a resident did mention about increasing all the boots on the ground. How can we increase the boots on the ground when another employee is receiving a $25,000 increase? I'm really confused. 10,000, 8,000, 17,900. If all of this is a response to just because salaries decline based off of a budget crisis, then increases need to be based off of evaluations, work history, and the things that have transpired between then and now. Not just, I want to bring you back. Because if work history or evaluations were, I don't know. I'm confused. I'm done, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Bass?
I also had an opportunity to look at this document and correct me if I'm wrong. I counted, I believe there were 12 employees who are still currently making less than $30,000. $29,996 is not $30,000. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
So just to piggyback on that, and that's what I also, after seeing this document, threw me for a loop, because we've heard many times that all employees are making over 30,000, and we get this document, that's not the case. We specifically asked for who's getting a raise based upon this budget, and we were told that it was basically bringing employees back, those ones that were missing, bringing them back to their full salary. And here we have multiple employees we would see have significant raises. And where's the justification? As Vice Mayor said, where's the justification for that? But primarily is that why were we told something different? That's the concern I also want to hear. So, Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, as far as the salaries are under 30,000, it says 29,900 and some odd dollars. That is an ADP calculation issue, and we will get with HR in regards to that. And whatever employee is short $6 for the year, we'll make sure that that occurs. That is typically an ADP input issue, and how ADP rounds out salaries. So we will look into that.
If I may, that just may be Excel. I mean, every employee is getting paid at least 1443 times 2,080 hours, which is 30,000 and change. So if it came out less, it's just because in the third or fourth decimal place, I didn't pick it up correctly.
So,
There's no, if I may, just, I'm sorry if I just.
you know, go ahead, Mr.
there's-
Anthony, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, there is no full-time employee there that's getting paid less than $30,000. You will see a lot of part-time employees. They work for certainly much less than 40 hours a week, and they will show up on the page at less than $30,000.
Also, Mr. Mayor. Also, to
You have
answer
the
your,
floor.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also, to answer the question of the commission, there were employees that are restored. There were employee promotions that occurred, employee reassignments, step changes within the police department based on collective bargaining agreements. So there are a lot of moving pieces that address salary. So salaries aren't frozen. They're not frozen. So if somebody gets a step increase, we have to issue a step increase. Somebody gets promoted to sergeant, we have to give them an appropriate increase when they promote to sergeant due to collective bargaining agreement. Yes, I agree that boots on the ground should get more money. We've tried to do calculations over the last year in order to do a 3% cost of living increase. And that dollar amount, number one, was a very large dollar amount. Number two, as I stated before in other commission meetings, we have 2 collective bargaining agreements that have been expired for multiple years, and we don't know the financial implications that those are going to have because those agreements have been expired for a very long time. So we have to understand the financial implications that we're going to have due to the collective bargaining negotiations. And from there, if the city wants to do cost of living increases after ratifications of said contracts, that is the city's choice indeed. We will have to look at the names because the list is not broken down by full-time, part-time. It's broken down by name. So I don't know, but what I'm saying is I don't know if they're union employees, non-union employees. The reason for the increase, I had to pull the PA forms from HR to see what the reasoning was. It could have been a merit increase due to the union contract. It could have been a step increase due to a union contract. It could have been a promotion. It could have been an employee reassigned. Those things happen. We have positions posted right now that we're recruiting for. And once those positions are filled, that's additional headcount and salary. So there is salary movement. The salary movement that I spoke of was salary movement that was done during a budget amendment, the last budget amendment. The last budget amendment, you saw salary movement in regards to said employees that were restored. This salary history, some of this implementation is now, some of the implementation is in the future after the budget is passed. If you look at the dates on the side. So some of it's tied to the passing of the budget tonight. Some of it's tied to things in the past. I have Mr. Anthony speak on that.
Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor.
Okay, so I'm listening to you, Mr. Manager, and then here I am confused again. So for several budget meetings, I requested for this document, and then unless I asked for it tonight is when we would have received it. I know it came before. However, the only thing I asked for was those that were impacted by the financial crisis, because that's what you said. You said those salaries went down because they went down based off of. Now, receiving a document where everyone's mixed in, and I'm not sure who's getting a raise because they went up or got a promotion. Now, who is based off of the financial crisis? Again, 17,200 is appalling to me. And I'm assuming that's not a raise. That's based off of but I don't see it here. I don't see that history that I asked for. And then you have the ability to give everyone on this particular list, and I know you chose the executives to either give raises or bring them back to stability. But majority, and no no implication or anything, but majority of the raises went to one department. Majority, and a history of them as well. And I'm not even gonna say, because you can see the paper and you know what department I'm talking about. It continues, looks like months, not like years, like months raises were given. I don't know, based off of this, that I have been asking for a while. I don't know if my counterparts are okay with this, but I'm not. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor, I do echo your concern, and it's even exacerbated by a comment by one of our citizens talking about the emphasis to put the funding to boots in the ground and to see increases in directors, significant increases in directors, some of whom only been here for a limited time. And then also looking at increases to directors where their position was put under someone else's. This is very confusing. So when receiving this information and seeing this, based upon what we heard and what we see now, it's a big difference. And echo a sentiment that literally there is an imbalance in how that is laid out, not just with the top people, but the bottom people, but also different departments. And one of our findings for the operational audit speaks to making sure that our policies and procedures ensure that all pay increases are appropriately supported. That's number 56. And those things, to see that and see that I'm having a hard time bringing these things together and making sense of this at the moment. So yeah, I'm definitely not in favor of this as it is at the moment.
Mr. Mayor, I wonder if I might address a couple what appear to be confusing. First off, I had understood wanted to see all pay increases. The three that were reset from 2019 to current were was the HR director, the city clerk, and the building official. Those are the three, if that helps. And Vice Mayor, what you're seeing is a series of increase in one department. That's all by contract. I mean, there's no discretion on that. If they take on a special assignment, they get 3% automatically, and otherwise there's a 5% step each year. So that's contractual.
That's, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Manager.
I will be more than open to get with the Human Resources Department and pull the personnel action forms for some. If you have questions on some, I have no problem being transparent and pulling the personnel action forms and justifications so we can see exactly, because I can't tell you because it's not listed exactly what the reason is, but I assure you, since I've been here, we have been following by the operational audit finding. There's a job posting. If it's a job posting, there's a salary range posted. If it's a step increase, it's contractual. The police department, they go to a specialty units, 3%. They get a step increase, they get 5% every year. So that's an 8% raise because they're in a step plan. The individuals, the boots on the ground individuals that are being affected mostly are ASME employees. We all realize this. Again, we are in union negotiations. We are literally in the middle of union negotiations. So the city has to bargain for salaries. We just cannot increase salaries for the boots on the ground people. We did it one time last year to 30,000, and that potentially was an issue, but we did it. If it's the commission's will, to look at certain salary increases during the budget amendment or various different things, and we can work some numbers out, we can work those numbers and present them through a budget opinion and show the impact. Just know the financial impact is going to be higher. when we go through union negotiations and these contracts are ratified, your financial impact is going to be higher because we're going to be obligated to pay these people something. Right. And I think that's what's right and fair to do. You know, I am in a position where I don't have a lot of control when it comes to salaries. If the employees are union employees, and that's the majority of our employees, they're union. So I cannot impact their salaries. They have a set pay scale. The contract is set how we do it. If I do anything beyond that, it's a violation of the contract. Could be construed a violation of the contract. You know, we had a potential issue last year when we get a $30,000 raise across the board. The union contacted us and said we didn't bargain with them for the $30,000 raise. Why did we give an increase without going to the union? So there are a lot of quandaries to this, but like I said, I'm more than open. If you have specific questions, we can set up meetings and we can go over personal action forms and show you documentation of where these increases come from. We can pull copies of union contracts so you can see the contractual obligations of the city and go from there.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Taylor, then Commissioner Davis.
Mr. Manager, for the union employees, is there a minimum wage? Because $30,000
So for
in
ASME,
Miami is.
so for
you can't live
ASME,
with that.
so ASME, number one, there's no step plan. They have no step plan. The police department has a step plan. ASME doesn't have a step plan. So they don't get 5% raises every year, no matter what, if the contract's active or not. They don't get the 5% raises. ASME doesn't get that. ASME salaries are at a hold. So basically, the contract expired. There's nothing else in the contract that says how salary increases are done, and salaries are held. The police department is different because their contract has yearly increases built no matter when you come in the police department. So they get the 5% raises every year. And I think their step plan is 10 years. So it's different. Then if they get into a specialty unit, it's 3%. If they get promoted to sergeant, it's a 5%. If they work night, they get a night shift differential. So there is you'll see a lot of salary changes in the police department because you have officers coming off nights, going to days, coming out of investigations, going back to patrol, going to patrol to investigations, going from patrol to street crimes. It's all these different units within the police department that are specialty units. Anytime we move the officer, we have personal action forms to be done to change their pay based on the structure of the unit or where they're working and assigned to.
I understand the police, but I'm on the fact that, not the fact, but a lot of our employees that make 30,000, you said are union employees. If we were to ask you to move them with this budget, to move them, I don't know,
Can't
up
do it.
more, a 3% raise,
You can't do that.
we can't do that.
No, we're
because of
currently
the
in collective bargaining.
collective bargaining.
Yeah, it would
Is
be a
that
violation of their
written out?
contract.
What that's mean?
It would be a violation of their contract. We can't do that. Even if we wanted to.
But when it happened before, you said that it was a violation of their contract, and was there a consequence based because of that action?
No, there was no
Or was
the consequence is we could not use it in bargaining. So we gave the increase. Good job, City of Opa-locka. You can't use this as a bargaining chip during negotiations. So just because you guys bumped them up to 30,000, don't come and say this is part of negotiations. It's separate part of negotiations. I do not recommend, and the city attorney sitting here, I don't recommend at all whatsoever that we start doing commission directive salary increases for union employees, especially while we're in union negotiations. Now, we can get into that area when we're talking about step increases, not step increases, living increases, cost of living. You guys have control of that. But like I said, I wouldn't step into that realm until these contracts are resolved and we know the financial implications. Again, you got not one, but two contracts being negotiated. One contract is the highest salaries in the city, which any city is law enforcement. So we need to know what that financial implication is going to be for the police department. We need to know what that financial implication is going to be for ASME. At that point, I would say commission, okay, let's look at cost of living increases. Now, here's the thing. When you do cost of living increases, you can't just do one segment of employees. It has to be all employees.
Okay, but let's.
I'm just speaking.
Get off the cost of living really quick. In regards to the 30 people that make $30,000, if we were to give them, let's just say, a 3% rate, and you said we were in negotiation with the union, right? If what was negotiated is less than what we gave them, will we have to take them back? Or can we keep them at, we can keep them at the highest number that,
Mr. Mayor.
because I want to see it move.
I'm just trying to
Well,
bring
let
the
me-
city attorney,
yeah,
that's all.
Let me
Okay.
jump on this, because one of the reasons why we got to that 30,000 was the conversation we wanted to have our employees have a living wage. That was the intent. And during that conversation, it was proposed that 30,000 was that mark. There's a lot of conversation about how to calculate that living wage and what that means. You know, we have this federal legislation saying it's $15 an hour and those things. But I think it's important if we want to make sure that anyone who works for the city of Opa-locka, whenever they do work, they're paid enough to live. I think we need to just make an ordinance or a resolution to ensure that any person that works for the city of Opa-locka is paid that living wage. And then that will be reflected however it needs to be reflected. So I think that may get at your intent, Commissioner Taylor. Okay, all right. Vice
I
Mayor.
did want to hear, because the attorney.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I just had a, I
Let me
did.
go Vice Mayor, Commissioner
I thought I was
Davis,
after
and then I'll
Taylor,
go to
Mr.
the
Mayor.
attorney.
I thought I was after Taylor, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, you're right. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the mayor to the city manager regarding the cost of living increases. Now, I'm hearing a couple of things. And of course, I was the one who pushed for the shade meeting to discuss as a body the collective bargaining. My concern is, I hear when we talk about asking employees, you know, and we talk about increases, you know, we hear that, oh, it's a penalty because they're asking employees, and ultimately we don't get credit for any increases. But looking at the salary history and those changes that are slated to take place in October 1, when we start our new budget, you know, how come those same concerns aren't being extended to the police department or any department, for that matter, that doesn't fall under ASME's jurisdiction?
Commissioner Davis, could you ask that question one more time so I can understand exactly what you're asking?
Okay, so in the past, you've alluded to ASME employees and them being, and ultimately, you know, speaking of the 30,000 cost of living increase that we passed as a board. You know, when we talked about maybe doing any future increases, the problem was you said that we don't get credit because we still are in collective bargaining for giving raises to employees, right? So that's ASME. Now, when we talk about PBA, looking at the document that was requested by Vice Mayor, it states that we're making several salary adjustments in the upcoming fiscal year budget, starting October 1. So how, on one hand, we're saying, you know, we can give a cost of living increase. Well, no, we can't give a cost of living increase because we'll get penalized. And then on the other hand, we're saying that, you know, PBA, any employee that's with a separate union, a PBA, you know, how they're able to, you know, what was the rationale, I guess, around, you know, making the increases in the upcoming budget
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
when they both are in collective bargaining? That's my question.
Through the mayor. I deferred the response to Mr. Anderson.
Sorry. Very quickly, what you have is a listing by individual employee. The ones that you see in police are baked into the contract. It's not debated. You don't see that for the ASME employees because it hasn't been arrived at. Does not mean that there's not money in the budget. We have very large contingencies in there once those agreements are worked out. So if you were to look at that page after the agreements are worked out, you're going to see a markedly different set of numbers.
Okay, so I'm hearing that so the agreements have been worked out with the PBA. That's why we.
No, sir. What you see in there for various PBA members right now is a current contract. What comes out of that contract may well change those numbers as well. And the point I was also making, you don't see anything for the ASME employees because they're not under any sort of contractual arrangements at the moment that would lead to an automatic increase next year. Doesn't mean it won't happen. You just don't see it at the moment.
Got it. So it's tied to the contractual, I guess, step increases that are in the PBA contract.
Yes, sir.
Got it. And ASME don't have that sort of.
No, their
obligation.
contract is silent in terms of steps.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. I know we're getting close to our time and we have to vote on this. I would love to hear the commission's thoughts about HB1 and how that has an impact. Because at the moment we're having about a 25% raise in our police budget. How much is that?
I think it's less than that. I think it's $1 million over. I don't have it in front of me. It's a number certainly in the teens.
So we have,
but again, that's staffing, and it's also recognition of things that were not necessarily brought into the prior budget.
okay. At the end of the day, it's over a 20% increase in the police budget, and based upon what we just heard about HB1, that has to stay, and we have to maintain that. So I would love to hear my colleagues' thoughts on what we just
Mr.
heard
Mayor.
with HB1 and also this.
I actually was next after Mr. Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, you can go, but I wanted to make sure.
Oh,
you get that
okay.
in there. Go ahead.
I wanted to direct my question to the city attorney and kind of really, and I totally understand Commissioner Taylor's question. But I do know what can and cannot happen. But my question is, although our employees are under a, the union, can they receive a one-time stipend or can they receive a one-time salary bonus that is not connected to negotiations?
Through the mayor.
Madam Attorney.
Vice Mayor, one of the things that I would love to caution the commission on is allowing the process to work. That we've been having a number of meetings, my staff, the manager's office, the unions, we've had a number of meetings. And when we have those meetings and we go through specific line items and we spend hours on the line going back and forth and revising contracts, it makes it very difficult when they can just go on and, kind of hear what the commission is saying, and it gives them kind of an upper hand. So normally the way these discussions are held is through shade meetings. We're able to do that with you for the union contracts. We'd like to have the opportunity to do that, but if that's okay. And certainly the manager can discuss with you all individually if you want there to be raises or increases. But generally speaking, the manager is correct. Through the, at least for the Ask Me, you do have to have those things bargained for. I had some concerns when this came up before because, you don't get credit for it. So if you all want to do that, that's wonderful. But guess what? You're not getting credit for it. And so they still come back and say, okay, I still want my whatever, this percentage or that percentage on top of whatever you did. It makes it very difficult for us to, get the best, have the best position for the city when, these discussions, I'm just being honest, right, take place in the sunshine like we don't have to do for these particular discussions for union contracts. But I did want to, if I may, Mayor, and very respectfully, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, I'm just letting you all know, I feel like I have an obligation as your attorney, right, to say what I'm saying right now. But I do want to address one of, if I may, Vice Mayor, one of the things that the mayor said with respect to HB1. I am getting and have gotten several calls from different organizations that really want to come and present to you. And I think over the weekend, I gave one of the attorneys the idea that maybe you should call the mayor or commissioners as opposed to me. But I think now, because we're talking about budget, it probably would be a good time to kind of let you all know what it is and the impact it could have on you. There are some plaintiffs groups that are, and they're doing it for free for certain municipalities that sign on to be plaintiffs as a part of some litigation to fight back against HB1. And they would very much like not just the city of Opa-locka, but all municipalities that are interested and could be impacted, like the city of Opa-locka could, to see if you all are interested, and we can talk about it another time, to join into a lawsuit. And specifically, there it relates to, HB1 relates to Florida's anti-protest law, which was formerly Florida 2020. It was in the legislative session last year. And specifically, it was following the nationwide and Florida racial justice protests of the summer of 2020 regarding, and Governor Ron DeSantis and other leading proponents of HB1 used their platforms to oppose demonstrations. And one of the things that came out of that, to summarize, HB1 permits state officials to complete a line-by-line review of municipal budgets and force modifications of those budgets, particularly when they deal with police issues. And so, for instance, if you all got a grant for something in your police budget, and then you have this grant, conceivably the next year you may not be able to go down from whatever the budget is. And so I say this because you want to be very, very careful about ballooning particularly your police budget. And making sure that you understand what those items are that are just not the step increases that are required by the contract, but there may be other increases that may be in that budget that you may want to pay attention to, because you're going to be stuck with those things. And particularly for a small municipality, and a lot of small municipalities, they may not even have police. Opa-locka is blessed that it has its own police force, but a lot of them may already be having a mutual agreement with the nearby municipality, or they may be, the county may be helping, or they may have other forces, in place. So it is not a given that you will always have a police budget or a police, a police force yourself, if in fact your budget balloons so much that you cannot no longer pay for your budget. Police generally takes, 60% or more of the budget, right? It's a really big ticket item. And so you may want to just be very careful about looking at those things. I can have, if you all are interested, the plaintiffs' attorneys that are interested in trying to bring these suits for different municipalities come in and make a presentation if you're interested. You may not be, because of course we're under the governor's oversight. So I don't know what that, complication might be. And that's something that you all can consider yourselves. But it's a really big deal. And there are a lot of implications connected to what you're discussing right now in terms of police budgets, if it doesn't necessarily impact the step increase. And so the kind of things that you may want to be focused on are things that are not necessarily those contractual obligated issues in the police budget, because it's going to come back and it may not be this year, it may not be next year, but just based on, where we're going, if it's $1 million increase, as the mayor has said, you're going to eat that. You're going to be stuck with that. And you're going to be stuck with anything that goes on top of it. So just, be very careful. Let me know, if you would, what you'd like to do in terms of hearing from these groups that would like to come in and, speak with you about the implications that you may have going forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any comments or thoughts? All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Davis.
I was gonna say, I was of course, against HB1. I even signed on many refusal letters to the governor's office by several entities, that were concerned with the state, ultimately edging away at our home rule powers and preempting our ability to pretty much control our law enforcement budget. I'm in support of, giving the police department, what is needed to be successful. I also realize that, that's something that needs to be sustained down the road. And I want to be sure before we make any increases of that magnitude, that we do have the foundation to sustain any level of enforcement and officers and just work that the department is doing. I also understand that we are currently in collective bargaining, and obviously the opportunity presents itself to have conversations not only internally, but with the union, basically to discuss, whatever changes we would like to see within a department as far as compensation and negotiating are concerned. But I also do realize that, police department budgets, not just here in our city, but across the country are, heavily funded and also, reflect many of the allocation of public dollars. And I want to be sure that, whatever money we're allocating in this budget and upcoming years' budgets, that, it reflect the needs of our community. So whether it's community policing, or more preventative strategies, maybe it's not necessarily, just more bodies or more officers on the ground, but that's up to us as a commission to decide. So, that's my position. And, I'd like to hear from the rest of my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, if I can get opportunity to speak.
All right, hold on. Anyone else from the commission? Okay.
After
Mr.
Madam
Manager.
Vice Mayor, I'll go after Madam Vice Mayor. Okay,
Mr. Manager.
so we've spoke of HB1 in August, we spoke of HB1 in July. The budget is sustainable, research has been done, Mr. Anthony has provided revenue analysis. For us to make any significant changes or moves to the budget today, after we had a budget hearing, one budget hearing and budget workshops, I think, as I explained earlier, during the beginning of explaining this process, I think would not be a great position for the city to take. I have Mr. Anthony provide any final thoughts. I know it's past 7 o'clock. We have to, I guess you guys have to do a vote or a recess. But I think this is something that needs to occur. And if this was not the intent of the commission, last budget hearing, we would have made the appropriate changes, submitted to the state, and delayed this budget hearing until we got the appropriate changes approved. So this does have implications tied to it. Mr. Anthony, if Mr. Anthony may, Mr. Mayor. I said, if Mr. Anthony can speak, because you know you identified.
You have the floor, Mr. Manager.
Okay,
So you-
Mr. Anthony.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Manager. I don't know that I can add much more to what's already been said. I think, as I said, I think we have a stabilized staffing level. Understand HB1. There are certain increases built in, as we've talked about, in terms of policing contracts and so forth. So even if the decision is made to cut back in some portions of policing, and I'm certainly not advocating that, but there's enough built in terms of year-to-year contractual increases that I think the chances of actually pulling back from the current levels are probably pretty remote.
Any other thoughts?
Mr. Mayor.
Mayor.
So this conversation is getting like really all over the place. And I hear the implications that what will happen if we don't pass our budget. And I recognize that we do need to move the city forward. And then I know the implications of what could happen based off of HB1 and based off the request. I think my concern is, and this could be directed actually to Mr. Manager. My concern is we've had workshops, we've had multiple budget meetings, and everything that we're saying tonight have always been concerns. And we've never been presented with an option, with an additional option. We've never been presented with a option A or option B. And so it's always been the one option, although these concerns have been raised several times throughout all of these meetings. So if no other options have been presented, it makes me think right here, right now, that it was meant to be passed, whether we liked it or not, whether we had questions or not. That's the way I feel right now, because we've never been offered a A or B. Just like if I choose a health plan, I have options. There were no options. We talked about HB1. This isn't the first time we talked about the implications of HB1 or what could happen. If we're giving $1 million, then we, as a board, we have to understand this. This is the only time I can say this to all of us. According to HB1, we will need to maintain $1 million in the budget. That can come from, so let's say something else, we don't get what we need, then it has to come from somewhere. Potentially parks, potentially the senior program. That money has to come from somewhere, because according to HB1, what we passed tonight, we must sustain. But we were never given another option. And so that again is, and I'm just gonna lay that out, make sure I have that on record. That is my total concern, because I heard Mr. Manager say, we've had all these meetings. Yes, we have, but we've never been presented other options. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor, very well said. I think you hit it right on the head in terms of the major concern that we have. Thank you. All right, Mr. Manager, and we need to make a decision. It is past 7 o'clock and we do have a regular commission meeting. So we either need to vote on this or recess this until another day so that we can move this, make a decision. So Mr. Manager, if you can speak on your item and then we make that decision.
Mr. Anthony, do you have anything else to say?
I just want to make a quick observation. I'll take the rap for not giving options. There's been an awful lot of discussion. I participated in all of it, certainly. I've never heard any consensus in terms of coming back and say, let's look at something else. I've heard the concern, but not any sort of consensus that says, let's come back and give us a cheaper version of what we're proposing. I'll take the rap for that. That's my problem.
Mr. Anthony, thank you. I appreciate those comments. When we have these workshops, they're very interactive. They're an active process. Yes, we did discuss HB1. Yes, we did discuss several items. And so for the commission's understanding, there have been several meetings after each workshop looking at other options. Can we crunch numbers? Can we reduce staffing? Can we do this? Can we do that? There have been many staff meetings where we've had these discussions after the workshops. If there was another option, we would have presented it based on fruition. If the commission would have directed us to say, you guys have no choice, you guys need to find another option, we would attempt to do it. And if there's no other option, we would come back and say, commission, there's no other option. So there's no intent to try to shove a budget through. I mean, and that implementation is like, same thing that happened yesterday. But the difference between yesterday and the CRA meeting today is we had multiple meetings. CRA only had one meeting go over budget. So I understand the CRA sentiments. This is my recommendation that we pass this budget. If there are any significant changes need to be made, it can be done through a budget amendment in October. But, it's my recommendation for the budget to be passed. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
All right. So I do want to put this on the table as a option. So recess, vote on the budget, or we can. In the past, I've seen where the state actually put money in reserve, as just kind of allocate that in the reserve area. That we can bring back up at a later date. So we may be able to make a motion to direct the manager to put the increases in police or staff increases into reserve. And we pass this budget, and then the following budget amendment, we have more time, we can discuss what happens with those funds.
Mr. Mayor.
And what that is. So that's a potential. So Commissioner Davis, and then we'll go back to Amanda.
Right. So that's what I was pretty much alluding to, which was a question that I proposed during the first budget workshop before we sent it up to the state, which was if we could actually increase or decrease the lines, right? The line. So, I was told that we can adjust any line items upon second reading. Here we are, with specific line items that we have, a problem with that deals with compensation. And we're still under a short timeline where we're ultimately faced with our back against the wall, and we're told to, approve it. I have a problem, with that. And I was one of the ones that did have a bit of concern with staff salary and the increases upon the first budget meeting. But I understand to the manager and Mr. Anthony's direction, not having clear consensus from the commission. But I think one thing was universal, which was upon second reading, just send the budget up, get the state's approval, and ultimately any subsequent changes we can make to any lines. That hasn't happened. So that's the part that I have a problem with, because I was told that we would be able to do that, and here we are upon second reading. And I'm done, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I'll be short.
Mr. Manager.
Commissioner Davis, I understand your sentiments. The problem is some of these increases are head count. Some of these increases are tied to contractual obligations. So the commission is to say, hey, put this in reserve, or let's hold off on this, or we're not going to approve that. It may well affect police officers getting their wages based on their union contractual agreement. What I'm saying is my office has been very much prudent. If the commission directed certain changes to happen through consensus, that my office has always done the research, made the change, and bring it back if it's possible. If it's possible. The changes to the police department budget, the chief has briefed, are significant changes to impact community-oriented policing, because that is non-existent in the city of Opa-locka. So we have to look at that as well. And we have to look at the well-being of the police department, which Chief Barrera has been doing an excellent job running since he's been here. So in saying that, we looked at it. Trust me, Bob is very diligent in understanding. He goes back, he even watches the meetings over and over again. We're very diligent in hear what you guys say, and we go back and do research and make certain tweaks. And sometimes we do make tweaks. we had budgetary increases due to the CRA budget not being passed. We had that as well. And that's going to be adjusted during the budget amendment. So in saying that, we're talking about HB1. I believe, based on the analysis from Mr. Anathan, that the city will be able to maintain it. Understand some of these compensation issues are tied to the union contract. They're tied to step increases. They're tied to already contractual obligations. And I don't want the city to ever be in a position of an unfair labor practice where we stop giving increases because there's no money in various line items because things are suspended. So my job is to develop the budget. You guys' key role is to approve it. I understand that. That's one of your key roles in the charter. I provide my recommendation. Mr. Anthony's provided his, and I just go with the commission's will at this time. Mr. Anthony, do you have anything else?
I was, excuse me. I was good. Apparently, Ms. Lazar has researched what's required if in fact this is recessed tonight. So that may be worth discussing just so everybody understands the implications of it.
Please share. That's the point. At the end of the day, we're representative of the people, and we want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence. So we have things that ideas. We look to staff to tell us how to make it happen, following all contracts, all laws, and all those things. So just help us figure this out. That's what we want. Madam Lazier.
All right, so good evening, everyone. Jerry Lazar with the City of Opa-locka, finance consultant. So I want to answer a point that Commissioner Davis made earlier. So yes, you can make changes today. You can make changes today on record right here, just that certain line items would be easier to change while some may require more research. For example, moving a staff person is moving benefits, it's moving FICA. It's not like moving a line item from contractual services to promotional activity. So yes, you can make changes today, but some changes may have broader implications to it. So yes, we did say you can make changes. That is the case. And you can still make changes today if you want. Again, you guys are past the time. So obviously we wanted to take that into consideration and look at some of the laws and rules associated with recessing. So yes, you can do a recess. It means that you cannot end this meeting. It also means that you're gonna do a notice of continuation. So you have to also set the time and the date of the next meeting. So for example, let's say you want to recess this meeting, you'd say you would issue a notice of continuation for maybe next Wednesday. You have to set the date and the time for the next meeting. So you can say September 30th, Wednesday at 5:01. It has to be after 5 o'clock. We're gonna continue the meeting, and then there has to be an advertisement done by the clerk on Sunday. I think you can do it because it has to be wide distribution to the community. And then, well, I'll read it in detail. So it says the taxing authority has the ability to recess the hearing because of circumstances beyond its control. So you have to make sure you state that you're recessing it because it's beyond your control. The taxing authority must publish a notice in a newspaper of general paid circulation in the county. The meeting has to be after 5, so 5:01, set the date, set the address. So preferably you'd probably want to do it at this location, 5:01 next Wednesday. The notice it cannot be in a legal, the notice cannot be in a classified section. Obviously the clerk has that. And the meeting has to be within 2 to 5 days of the advertisement. So if you advertise it next Sunday, you have 2 to 5 days to do the meeting. And another point I want to make is that if you guys were able to do a special meeting or additional meeting for the CRA and able to approve that piece, you could collectively also include that in the city's budget as well. So that's just another point that I wanted to make. So those are your options. You'd have to pause this meeting and then recess it for continuation to another meeting. You'd do an agenda, a motion for that, and you'd set the time and the date certain in your motion.
Okay. And what about the idea of making a motion to amend directing the manager to amend this budget to move all staff increases not tied to contract, and also increases to the police budget to reserves.
Yes, you could do that. If that was an option, then you would, between now and the next meeting, you have time to work it, right? So that's, you guys would meet with the manager's office and make those necessary points or direct him today to make that change. And then we would go back and rework the budget. So that's where Mr. Anathan would go and redo the numbers similar to what he did today. Go ahead, sir.
Ms. Lazier, also legal implications need to be evaluated because there are most likely will be some tied to this. So, you know, we probably want to get an opinion from the attorney as well about some of these
What
items.
legal implications are you referring to?
If you're like stopping compensation for police department is tied to step increases and various different things like that, and then your employee compensation related matters, it just gets into a dicey environment. And then, you know, employee compensation related issues typically is a managerial issue. And then the commission directing changes to specific staff compensation and salaries, positions, and various different things like that. I just never would advise the commission to go in that area, but that is their will, that's their will. I just would never advise that, but I'm not the attorney, I'm just the manager.
All right, so Madam Attorney, because I know it specifically said anything that's not tied to the contract, could you,
Right, I'm
provide-
not completely familiar with what Mr. Pate is talking about, but the commission does obviously approve the budget. That's something that you all do within your purview, and you have the legal authority to do that. And I think what Ms. Lazar laid out was what she has researched as this is the proper way to do the notice. So if the commission decided that all of those things that are non-contractual, you want to have more information about those things, continue your meeting to a date certain based on issues beyond your control, and you state that on the record and you all come up with that date now, I think that you would be within your authority to do so.
all right, we'd like to hear from each of the commission on whether we want to vote now, recess until a date certain, or a motion to amend the budget to make the increases in the police and also any staff compensation that's outside of contractual obligations put into a reserve that can be later decided at a budget amendment. All right. So, Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would be in favor more of the recess, simply because I think that provides an opportunity for us to not only engage in the city's budget and all of our collective concerns, but also to weigh the issues. You know, maybe we could do a CRA board meeting right after. I don't know how it can be combined, but we could also have that separate conversation as well, and just send the budget up as one document. So I'll probably be more in favor of the recess.
Anyone else? Commissioner Bass.
Recess.
I'm in favor of the recess.
All right, so we have three. So recess to next Wednesday, 5:30.
So you want to stay,
Hold on, yeah, I need to get consistency on the date and time.
But, Mr. Mayor, question.
Commissioner
In regards to the CRA, Ms. Lazier, you spoke about it going up as one document. Would the CRA meeting have to be before the budget is approved? So the CRA needs to meet Tuesday?
so I was
Or-
just giving an option. So I know you guys want to separate the CRA, but, and obviously the budget was presented this evening without the CRA included. I'm stating if you recess this meeting, it also gives you an option to get the items for the CRA together if you were to want to include it in the city's budget, right? You can have that passed if you could possibly have a meeting before your continuation meeting. And then you could include that in the city's budget if that's something that you so choose, right, to do. And the only reason I mentioned that is because, I spoke to Mr. Delane as well, the interim city manager. And, there's a process to separate the CRA. I don't know if you guys have gone through that process. I think it's a planning process that needs to take place. And I don't know if you guys are necessarily at that stage to really run the CRA on its own. I think you have to allow him to put a plan in place to move to that direction, right? Because there's some steps that needs to happen, and it won't happen October 1st. So just because you separate your budget doesn't mean you'll be ready to move and function as a separate entity. So I think it's probably best to be included with the city's budget. I mean, I understand you guys needed more time to review the budget, but it should be included to give you guys the grace and time to prepare for this transitional phase that you're planning to go into. That was just my discussion with him earlier today, but I know the will of the commission was separated. And so Mr. Anathan moved forward with that with the direction of the manager.
Okay. All right. So I had just made aware, I know the CRA is looking to have a meeting on Wednesday at 5:30. What day and time, or do you want to try and have that meeting at 7 o'clock on Wednesday? It gives an hour and a half for the CRA meeting that Wednesday, or do you want to have the budget hearing the day after or that Friday? Well, actually, yeah, Thursday is probably our last day in which we could do that. Have this meeting. So Wednesday or Thursday. Wednesday.
Mr. Mayor, do we need an hour and a half? I mean, we're only just approving the budget or not, right? For the CRA. I mean, it's not a full agenda, is it? No. I mean, I'm just wondering, is that something we can do in like 30
That's what I was
minutes and
thinking
then,
too, 30 minutes.
and then come back behind with the commission meeting?
Just being there last night with the budget and knowing that there may be some significant changes to the budget and also budget narrative. I do hope that the CRA manager can meet with all of us individually, but I think the 30 minutes may be a little too restricted. So I think we should do at least an hour just to give ourselves some cushion room just in case. Just in case. So if we have a meeting, either you want to do 5:00, the CRA meeting is looking to be at 5:30. So then we can probably have this budget recess meeting at 6:30 if the commission would like.
Mr. Mayor, is the CRA, I know the manager's here, is he willing to move the meeting to 5? And the commission does 6? Or is that an issue with timing for?
Has advertisement already been done?
That was my next question. Has the advertisement already been done? He's here, that's why.
For the CRA meeting, and yeah, I'm always going to advocate for meetings at 5:30 at least, give us some time to get from work. So that's we have challenges with that. So and I'm here, I see a lot of nods already with that. So 5:30 and for the CRA, and then 6:30 for the recess budget meeting. Is that
Okay, yeah, if it's a time challenge, yeah, I got it.
okay? All right. So do I have a motion to recess the second budget
Mr.
hearing to when?
So for the CRA, you have
Mr. Manager?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I just want to point the correction. For CRA, you have a workshop and a meeting back to back. So an hour is not going to work. You're going to need at least 2 hours for the CRA, an hour for the workshop, an hour to actually approve the budget. You're going to do a workshop, and then from there, you're going to exit the workshop. You're going to go into the actual meeting, make whatever changes you need to make based on results of the workshop, and then direct the manager to transmit the budget to the state. So you're going to need at least 2 hours. And that's based on the plan we talked about today, correct?
You say at least 2 hours, because not an hour and a half, like an hour workshop. and
Well,
then
y'all talk
during that hour workshop, we can go through everything,
Mr.
and
Mayor.
then in that meeting, we
Mr.
just
Mayor.
have the meeting to approve those changes. You're saying we need an hour to
That's what we plan.
discuss
That's what we
the
plan
thing,
for. Yes.
and then we're gonna need another hour to just vote what we discussed in the prior meeting?
You got to do motions to make the changes if you don't agree with them. If you all, because he's meeting with you all in advance, you all may be in concurrence and agreement already. So it may be a 1 hour meeting, 30 minutes for a workshop, 30 minutes for approval. I just watched a budget discussion lasted quite a while last night. So I just want to give you guys enough buffer that you guys don't run out of time. So that's the only reason I said 2 hours, 1 hour workshop, 1 hour to discuss and approve. And then it gives you a gap. If you end early, it gives you a gap to go to the bathroom, or stretch or something, you know, before you get into the commission part piece of it.
And is that, I see the manager, the CRA manager come to the podium. Is there any other comments, or is that it from?
Mr. Mayor, Commission, Coriander Lane, interim CRA manager. I just want to clarify that the meeting we can do at 5:30. An hour should be fine, 5:30 to 6:30, and 30 minutes if everyone's well and good standing of what we discussed during that hour should be sufficient. Also, having that meeting with you all individually should be able to clarify all the concerns of the board. And then I'll have enough time on Tuesday to pretty much ratify all of those requests. So when we come back on that Wednesday at 5:30, I'll pretty much have everything summarized for the board's review and potential approval. That way we can discuss what needs to be discussed within that hour timeframe, move immediately to that meeting at 6:30 to approve that budget. And then if the board or commission so chooses at 7 p.m. can have the continuation of this budget hearing meeting.
Okay, so we cannot speak on behalf of the CRA board. I know they have to do their polls of the CRA board, but for the commission and our recess for this meeting, 7 o'clock, 7:30. I see yes for 7 o'clock. All right, so do I have a motion to recess the second budget hearing to Wednesday, September 29th at 7 p.m.
Put the motion on the floor, Mr. Mayor.
Moved by Commissioner Davis. Second by Commissioner Teller. Discussion. Madam Clerk.
And Mr. Mayor,
Oh.
and for reasons beyond your control, and I'm assuming that's a part of the motion.
For reasons beyond our control. So a motion, all right. What I just said, adding reason beyond control, is that your motion, Commissioner Davis?
Yes, it is, Mr. Mayor.
And is that what you're seconding, Commissioner Taylor? Okay, Madam Clerk?
And the location, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, and they'll be here in Shabundy Village Auditorium. Thank you very much, Madam Attorney. Location, Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Taylor?
Yes.
Yes? Yes. All right, Madam Clerk?
Vice Mayor Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Bass,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott,
Yes, this
motion passes.
budget hearing is called to a recess. Thank you. All right, give us at least 5 minutes. Give us 5 minutes to restroom and we'll get started. We'll get started at